panel discussion, we hope to examine the pros and cons and the current focus on book direct and costs of distribution generally. And we aim to break down the costs associated with distribution and customer acquisition within this panel discussion. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jane Lewis and I'm the moderator of the session. And would like to welcome our three panel experts. We have three top executives in the industry with international experience in hospitality and travel. Specifically, I'd say experts on revenue management, PMS systems, CRS systems, data analytics, content management, hotel operations throughout our industry. So I think we're in for some exciting discussions. Sally Richards has over 25 years experience in the industry and runs her own business, Raspberry Sky. And Sally and her company are consultants in the industry specializing on revenue management, distribution, etc. David Turnbull, to my right here, is co-founder and chief operating officer of Snapshot Marketplace, an analytics company, 20-year industry veteran.
25 at least.
25.
You're just not updated recently.
And has worked with companies like Design Hotels, Le Méridien, prior to setting up his own company. And on the very right, or my very right, is Richard Walter. Richard has many years in the industry, having grown up in hospitality through family-run hospitality business. Has worked for some independent hotels before founding his company, Muse, which is an independent PMS system, an operations platform for hostels and small family-run hotels.
I wouldn't say so. I think we see ourselves as ultimately a great competitor to Oracle.
Okay, so our agenda for this session, we have 40 minutes to cover some key critical questions around distribution costs in the industry and customer acquisition. We'll start off with just some high-level dynamics of what is happening in our industry in the global marketplace. Not too much, because I think we've covered off on quite a few of these in the first session with Benjamin when he highlighted the increasingly competitive and fast-paced environment that we are in the travel and hospitality industry. Today, online hotel accommodation bookings are 35% penetration in total bookings made in our industry. Consider that online really has only risen in the last sort of 20 years. So we're seeing 35% penetration, and year over year, it increases about 22%. So we're incredibly moving fast with online booking and becoming very challenging in the industry. We've seen the rise of new entrants in the industry with Expedia, Priceline, Kayak, Metasearch, Airbnb. So we're in a constantly changing industry with OTAs and Metasearch. We see Google. It was only in 2000 that they brought on Google AdWords. And of course, today that represents 96% of their total turnover. It was alluded in earlier sessions that Priceline spends $2.6 billion a year in online advertising through SEM and SEO. Expedia is not dissimilar at 3.3. And the likes of hotel chains, like IHG, they spend $653 million a year in advertising and marketing total. So you can see quite a large difference. And what does that mean for a small independent hotel or a small group, small chain, in terms of competing in this marketplace? Mobile, adaptability of mobile, real-time booking from anywhere. And just consider that Apple and the iPhone has actually only been out for 10 years. And, you know, it's so significant for us today in the industry in terms of looking and booking and real-time. We've seen the rise of social media and review sites to have the highest ratings and to be relevant and use it to convert customers. And we're seeing fast change in IT and technology. In the last session that Kevin moderated, it was brought up that industry technology for us is often legacy, dated, conservative. So there are a lot of challenges for us. We see disruptors in the industry in terms of new content, service departments and Airbnb, for example. And we see a changing workforce with millennials diversifying and coming in, and they're very digital orientated and very tech savvy. So all in all, it's an increasingly competitive marketplace, and it's very fast paced. So for our first panel discussion, the rising costs of hotel distribution, we want to look at the complex nature of the different models in our sort of distribution space, and look at technology generally, because if it's not connected or there is a fault along the way, there is an inability to convert that booking. So if I start from the very right of the slide, we have the supplier or the hotel who connect to the different systems, the PMS, the CRS, the sales and catering, the revenue management, the channel management systems, and they all have a cost involved. Next to that, we have CRS, we have Switch. So we have all of the systems and the intermediaries in between, global distribution systems, aggregators, we have our OTAs, we have wholesalers, representation companies, we have our own CRO and voice. So it's quite a spaghetti junction in between before we actually reach the consumer interface, whether that be direct or through an OTA, and the customer on the very left. So it's quite a spaghetti junction in there. So David, I think what I'd like to do is have your thoughts on a lack of industry understanding on the true cost of distribution to acquire guests. What do you think? What are your thoughts on that?
I think the hotel P&L lies. We tend to kind of obsess about the money that's paid out on a monthly basis without really actually looking at where that booking was landing. So we have a tracking issue. We'll have a very bad month where a lot of commission is paid out for future bookings that are actually going to accrue 3-4 months from now. So that's one of the first issues that we have. The P&L lies in many ways because, of course, there's an obsession with looking at this one line of hotel commission. And as a percentage, that gets higher and higher and higher as the channel shifts away from other channels over, in particular, to third parties. But do other parts of the P&L adapt to that channel shift? So if you are seeing a channel shift over to digital channels, are you kind of reflecting that in terms of how you manage labor cost, for example, direct marketing cost? And I think that's one of the issues that we have, is that we don't yet really have the mechanics to be able to kind of truly kind of, one, understand, and two, track what is the real cost of acquisition. So I'll just put a couple of thoughts out there. Who cares if I pay 25-30% in an OTA channel if it's acquiring me a first-time customer that's paying a premium rate? In terms of profit, that's actually fantastic. If I can then convert that customer directly the second time they book, then it's actually been probably the cheapest cost of acquisition that I can apply. So that's really, I think, the starting point for the discussion, is actually understanding what is the real nature of cost of acquisition. It's way beyond the commission or the markup, and it goes deep into labor cost, into collaterals, into a whole host of marketing and sort of support costs that go with that. And we need better education, we need better improvement, just like the unified standard of accounts, we need to have improved segmentation, standardized segmentation within the industry as well.
Thank you. Richard, your comments and thoughts on the question, please.
I totally agree with that. I think everything comes down to what is your actual cost of sales. I think most people end up looking at that kind of invoice that comes in from Booking.com thinking, oh my God, I'm giving so much away, and that weighs on your mind so much, but you don't really mind the fact that you've given away 30% to a wholesaler, or maybe on the day that you've actually sold a room, you've pre-sold some of that availability actually to a channel, and that can be 60%. And if Booking.com ever did that, you'd be completely up in arms. You'd be like, oh my God, I've given them a 60% commission. But because of the fact that there's, we obsess about cash flow, we obsess about the the actual P&L, as David rightly says, I think that skews our understanding, and I think that's actually a fault of ours as technology providers, that we haven't given hotels up until now the ability to really kind of see that and to really kind of track it. And I think that's one of the things that's really holding our industry back, is actually kind of freeing up that data, and whether it's actually almost kind of unionizing to make sure that Booking.com is actually giving us that data through an API. I mean, currently, even if you do a commission override to Booking.com, you can't actually see your commission data up until the end of the month, or it's very, very difficult to actually get that kind of information. And I think the future really will be about easiness of integrations, easiness of trying to actually get that information out from all of these kind of different sources, and I think also about making sure that we're comparing apples to apples the entire time. I think David and I were having a discussion about the fact that it's so that everyone is segmenting in a different way, and if I think about it, somebody coming in or phoning up a reception, or, for example, emailing, those are not two different channels. Those are the same channel. It's called personal,
personalization.
That's a direct contact. And you should be, putting that under one roof. And in the same way, you should be then, actually, the way that Booking.com is segmenting your customers, you should be working on segmenting your customers so that when you're actually kind of offering them an experience, either through a booking engine or even through some kind of proper landing page, or even expanding into thinking about landing pages which you never even thought of. So, for example, having your booking engine on websites that are not even yours, that kind of thinking, and that kind of segmentation really has to actually infiltrate into the hotelier's mind.
Okay, thank you. Yeah. Sally?
Well, back to basics, I think, because it's nice. But from my experience, I think it's incredibly difficult for hoteliers to fully understand the cost of acquisition. There's a lot of silos of information that sit across the business. So whether it's in sales, marketing, revenue, reservations, GM, etc., everybody's doing different deals and at different levels. And actually, ultimately, what happens is the reservation clerk who sits down in the dungeon of the office that says, okay, I'm going to change my commission for Booking.com today from 15 to 23 because we need business in this weekend, etc. That never gets tracked or really known. So I think it's really difficult on cost of distribution or cost of acquisition. I recently spent some time with a rather large hotel group in sales, and we talked about cost of acquisition, and they can itemize every TMC program they're in, all of the marketing programs they're in, all of the costs, etc. And we're really proud to say this is our cost of acquisition. But it didn't include any GDS transaction fees, any third-party Repco fees. And when I ask them about that, they say, well, we don't know what that is. We don't look at that part of the business. That's not important to us. So trying to pull that all together in a way that's seamless and real in real time, and then sharing that across the organisations. So for the front office clerk that's picking up the phone when you're saying, hey, look, I'm looking on Booking.com, I want to come next weekend, I can see this rate of 129, I just got a question on it, why isn't she at that point saying, yes, you can book that? Because actually she doesn't know that if you book that 129 rate, she's not going to pay, the company's not going to pay the 15% commission. She's saying, no, you have to book that through Booking.com, I can't take the booking at that rate. So it's about communication, everyone understanding, it's about people being accountable, responsible within the organisation operation to understand, and it's really difficult to do.
Yeah.
And nobody does it well.
Thank you. I'd like to ask, actually, we know that the distribution cost has many touch points, it's many systems, many different technology, different business models as well. It can be a transaction fee, a percentage, and as you say, Sally, it's very siloed within the hotel itself. Hotel sales team one way, another department another way. What I would like your thoughts on is, do you think there is an industry standard today to look at cost of distribution and customer acquisition? Do you think we should have one? And understanding the complexity and the fragmentation, do you ever think we will get to one in the industry? It was a bit of a three-part question, but I'd like your thoughts on Should there be a standard? Is there one, and can we get to one?
I'll take this.
Yeah.
Because I think it starts off from the finance department. It has to come from the accounting level, basically, because there's all of these kind of different costs of acquisitions, but there's also these kind of costs of acquisitions that are standard, but also ones which we never think about. So, for example, bank transaction fees, credit card fees. The whole idea of virtual cards, basically, like. Those add a significant, up to 2-3% basically, in additional cost of sales. All of these things need to be considered, and if you're not looking at it from the total cost of acquisition, you're always going to be looking at just that one tiny little silo, basically. And I think that then actually impacts the way that you think about it.
But we shouldn't rely too much on finance, because then we'll be waiting
We're never going to any business. Yeah.
30 to 90 days to get the data. We need to make a differentiation between audited data and non-audited data. And the commercial teams have to be able to faster access data that will reveal what is the profit made on this reservation. Right? I find it ridiculous that big brands restrict their revenue managers from doing variable overrides and OTAs. Why? Are you saying that you're penalizing positioning? You're not allowing the hotel to increase their positioning, but they are allowed to decrease price. That's just reducing your profit. So that's one example why I kind of push this forward, that we need to have better tools to quickly collect and store data, so that commercial managers can make smarter, faster, real-time profit decisions.
I think the other thing is that in my experience, when we look at cost of distribution, we also look at channel and the connectivity and the technology there. So if you've got a two-way direct connect into PMS or CRS, from an efficiency standpoint, yes, you're probably paying a slightly higher transaction fee, but you don't have the human intervention. Now, if you've got somebody sitting updating a channel management tool or multiple extranets, there's cost involved in that. So there's a time and motion study to say, okay, if we're going to do Expedia separately to Booking.com to whatever, because we don't want to bite the bullet and buy a channel management tool because that's expensive. Well, what is the physical cost of Lucy sitting there and updating all of these? What is the impact on your revenue management, because you've never got true inventory, because you've got a whole stack of faxes and emails that now need to be manually updated into the PMS. And it's making sure that there's an understanding in the business with the commercial team that there is a cost of that, and that also needs to be incorporated into the cost of distribution. So I'm a true believer of automation as much as you can, but quite often, particularly in the Middle East, you get booed out because labour costs are so cheap. Why would we buy a bit of kit when we can employ 10 people to sit there and manually do it, because that's more cost effective? It's not, because they're not making the right informed decisions. I think it's a really tricky area. I think there's a number of companies that are trying to develop a piece of kit that can suck this data in and give you some real-time cost of acquisition stats and dashboards. Some people sitting closer to me than others. I don't know if you're doing that too, but anyway. But the reality is these really smart companies, of which there are many, haven't been able to produce something as yet, because it is really complex and there are variables. And if it was easy to do, we would all be doing it, and it's not.
But this is very contentious, but if I was running an independent hotel, I would literally outsource my entire sales to an OTA. I would simplify and streamline my business. My obsession is with guest experience, and I will learn everything about my guest during that in-house stay. That's how not I will beat the OTA, but I will differentiate myself from the OTA by improving my experience, improving my reputation, and putting a premium on my rate. That leads to better profit. We've got to start to not use this terminology of beating the OTA. They're an important distribution partner. We've got to optimize and learn the best blend between direct and non-direct. And that, for me, I feel is the main education piece that's missing at the moment in the industry, how to kind of harmonize that.
I mean, I'd agree without the word OTA. I think there's enough tools that you can use, because if you think about it, like 18% is ridiculous. Like you always have to ask yourself, why did Kayak only start making money once they added hotels? Because there's no slack in the airline industry. And I also hate it whenever hoteliers compare themselves to the airline. Those two are not similar at all. Like, the airline industry is consolidated. The only thing that's interesting about it is the flexible pricing. But generally, two completely different industries. You've got a huge amount of supply that's being added all the time with Airbnb, with service apartments, with shared living spaces, all of those kind of different things. So it's a totally different industry to the airline industry. But I think what is interesting is that you have to think about it from that point of view of, how can I actually make everything that I do, the point of automation and the point of outsourcing is just exactly to focus in on that guest experience, because that's our industry. We take care of somebody for a short amount of time while they're in our home. And that's what we do. We don't do all of the other things that we're now trying to do, and I think that's what we really have to kind of concentrate on getting back to. Like, I love the statement from I think the VP of Import there. It really is just about the product. As long as your product is good, you will get sold. There's enough places in the world that now want to sell your industry, your inventory, and just making sure that your product is great. That's basically the main focus that we should actually have.
I think can I just say that the challenge is that if you look at, there's a lovely example of the Georgetown Hotel in Paris is a leading hotel of the world. You go on and check availability on leading hotels of the world, your rate return probably goes down 12 pages. Different rates, different room types, different rates, different room. I mean, it's like you need an Excel spreadsheet to go in and put it in and go, this one includes breakfast, this one has Wi-Fi, this one is prepaid, this one is flexible. You check that same hotel on OTA, your rate return is about 2 or 3 line items. So from a customer perspective, which one is easier to do business with? And that's what it's about. And that's why the OTAs are really smart in converting business. And what the hotel industry hasn't learned about is that actually we don't need to know about every type of room you have. This one is oblong with a little bit on the side, and this one is a square shape with a different kind of window and whatever. Yeah. From a consumer perspective, it's small, about right, or it's a suite. When you check in, you walk into the room, you go, oh, this is small. Well, this feels about right, or this is lovely. We don't care if it's a comfort or an executive or a classic, or we don't actually even know what that means. So we make the selling experience on brand.com so insular that we want to tell you what we want to tell you, not what the consumer wants to shop for. And I think that's why the OTAs have been so successful, amongst the fact they spend millions on marketing.
Because we're selling travel experience,
Yeah.
right? But sadly, that doesn't convert into how hotels deliver that through their booking and conversion experience. I still say that we must make that distinction between stay brands and booking brands and focus on what we do best, right? I think it's a very fair point.
Okay, I want to go on to the next discussion point, because it ties in very nicely with the discussion you just started, but it's about intermediation. And Calibri Labs put out a white paper probably about 6 years ago, demystifying hospitality distribution. And in it, they identified the concept of intermediation. And this is the triangle in the middle, which is probably a little bit old now, because there are so many other intermediaries that are in the play to drive bookings direct to the consumer. They introduced intermediation of large technology companies and travel technology companies coming into the landscape of hotels and booking. They estimated recently, whilst updating their paper, that 15 years ago, the cost of acquiring a customer, we'd expect to pay about 5 to 10%. So we are six years on from this original study, and they're now saying that it's anywhere from 15 to 25%. So our costs are going up in terms of acquiring customers in online space. So I wanted to ask the panel, and feel free whoever wants to sort of chime in first. If you consider there are so many different ways to book today, I'm interested, and I hope the audience is too, on what your thoughts are around hotels effectively exploring new techniques for implementing customer direct acquisition strategies. What do you think these should be? How do you think they should do them? And I'd like any differentiation you want to add on a chain versus an independent, because it's very different in terms of the landscape of that customer acquisition.
I think diversification is the key. You know, if you're trying to sell, you've got to try lots of different ways of actually trying to sell that, whether it's, you know, trying to think up innovative ads that you can have on Bing, on Google, and then thinking about, you know, who's your customer on all of those. Thinking about, you know, what does your presentation look like on the OTAs, but also thinking about, you know, what's your own presentation, what's your own you know, call to action on your own assets, basically. And I think you just have to have a very broad strategy, but you have to think about it from the point of view of who's the customer who's coming to that one particular, and trying to really kind of zero in on, you know, who's the customer who books through Google, who's the customer who books through Booking.com, who's the customer who books through, and they might be very, very similar, but I think if you're not thinking about it in this kind of way, and if you're not thinking about, you know, all of these different channels that you can actually book through, then you probably will be leaving quite a lot of money on the table.
Okay.
So.
I think from you know, if I don't talk chain, if I talk sort of, you know, independent and small groups, I think what's really important is to work with third-party providers that really are innovative and developing, you know, next generation technology and continue to evolve. So whether that's your PMS provider and or CRS provider that give you the best connectivity, that help you with the best booking engine, the best responsive design, help you with your digital elements too. But I think the way to drive direct business, I think that was kind of the question, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Is really about delighting the customer at property and servicing that customer really well when they're there. I've got an example of a client that runs a 22-bedroom hotel in New York. He's number 11 on TripAdvisor out of 476 hotels. He meets and greets every customer. He asks them to put it on TripAdvisor. There's a really small team, and it's all about personal care, welcoming the customer. They're there to recommend. It's a bit like Airbnb. I can tell you the restaurant. I can tell you the best show to go to. I can get you the tickets. And it's that personalised service. And actually, he gets repeat business. He's driving corporate business and leisure business. He's got his own website. He works with the OTAs. He's got integration. And do you know what? His biggest sales point is TripAdvisor, because everyone's going on putting great reviews, quirky reviews about this odd GM. Well, he is odd, but actually that's the personality of the property, and actually that's what makes him unique. So it's, you know, I think it was your point earlier. It's, you know, be hoteliers, delight the customer. You know, do the best that you can with connectivity and technology. Work with a provider that can manage that for you and evolve that and develop that and keep you at leading edge, but concentrate on what's really important, and that's servicing the guest at property.
Sadly, we've run out of time, but before I say thank you to the panel, I think you can see they're very knowledgeable and very passionate on the subject matter. We didn't cover a lot of things that we did want to talk about, so maybe Alan will invite us back next year. I do have one last question though before we wind up. We've kind of examined some of the pros and cons of booking direct and the overall cost of distribution. So from the masterclass and the discussion, do you think that we're able in the industry to break down the true costs associated with distribution and customer acquisition? And will we ever get there? Richard?
I think it's just a matter of time before somebody comes up with a solution, or it's just about kind of getting all the data out. And that's the only thing. It's just, you know, all data should be open, everyone should have access to it, and everyone should have the possibility to do something with it.
Great. Sally? Oops, sorry.
Nope. I was just going to praise David, and I think like the stuff that they're doing with their platform is amazing, and I think there's, you know, other ways, but I think it's really something that's totally needed in the industry.
Yeah. Sally?
I think it'll take a while to get to the true cost of acquisition, but I think there's a lot you can do in your own hotels today. I don't think you need to be too scientific about it, but just start with, you know, what is my travel agent commission? What's my OTA commission? Am I manually managing it, or is it automated? Let's assign a cost if it's manually managed. Let's look at, am I doing PPC? Am I aware that I'm doing overrides on Booking.com to get placement? And just work on a basic Excel model that you can review on a monthly basis, just to sort of say, you really just want to see, how revenue efficient am I by channel, just to get a sense of, where that sits, and then run with that and build it and evolve it, and then look at, purchasing a tool as and when it's available, if that's right for you.
Yeah.
And David?
All of the data is available today. I know many people in the room that actively work with that data. It's the responsibility of the vendors to work together to make it easier for the collection and storage of that data, to then hand that back over to the operators so they can start to do something meaningful with it.
Cool.